All right, guys, let's recap last night's Who's Number One. So obviously it was meant to be the long-awaited rematch between Gordon Ryan, Felipe Pena. Gordon Ryan, suffering some health conditions, had to pull out. No better time to plug my new product available on BJJ Fanatics in conjunction with the Fight Dietitian, where we cover everything you need to know about healthy eating, cutting weight, rehydrating, and basically like just general foods for recovery, just so you stay healthy while you're putting in all those hours on the mat. But let's get into the breakdown of the night. Again, it would have been awesome to see Gordon versus Felipe. Everyone was dying to see that rematch. I believe it would be the fourth match. 2 going towards Felipe Pena, 1 going towards Gordon Ryan. But again, he had to pull out. Thank God, Nicky Rod was available. Nicky Rod filled in last minute for Vinny Margulies against Gordon, basically 1 to 2 days notice. He does the same against Felipe Pena here. I don't think people realize how much of a sacrifice he makes to do that. He's coming in completely unprepared. Luckily, he trains hard all the time, but again, he is coming in against an opponent he hasn't prepared for. Obviously, Felipe Pena is doing the same, but Felipe is in a training camp. He was training probably the hardest he's ever trained in his life, looking to get revenge against Gordon Ryan. So we saw probably the best Felipe we've ever seen against Nicky Rod. So we'll start with that match. Obviously, that was I think the highlight of the event. One thing I will say about this match is we have to stop doing any matches over 15 to 20 minutes. Literally, I want you to ask yourself in your head, has anything good ever happened after the 15-minute mark? It's just like when you're out at the club, has anything good ever happened after 3 a.m.? Cut your losses on that. We want to see two guys basically try to kill each other for 10 to 15 minutes. We don't want to see these long, grueling, dragged out matches. I can't emphasize that enough. I believe most people feel the same way. No one wants to, people barely want to watch grappling as it is, let alone commit 30 minutes to a grappling match. It might be more entertaining if it was like MMA, we had some rounds in between, so at least we can reset the position from time to time, dry the guys off, and allow them to come back with a little bit more freshness. But I can't emphasize enough, I think that's holding the sport back. Don't do these long matches. People pace themselves, they slow it down. Boring. But again, let's get back to the match. I thought it was a very competitive match. Obviously, both guys had some good looks in the match. Something I was really impressed about with Nicky Rod is he's now getting the confidence to open up a bit more. If you watch the B Team YouTube channel, obviously you watch him doing a broad range of things in the gym. But now we're seeing him go for leg locks on Felipe. Obviously you saw his EBI performance. He hit like 2 or 3 different submissions. So again, we're seeing a really developed Nicky Rod. A lot of people might look at him and think he's just a wrestler, but as you can see, he's trying to open up his game, and he's doing that in a very short period of time. He's only been training for 5 years, and now you're seeing a guy that's been training that little amount of time feeling comfortable opening up against these guys. So I think it's clear that guys like Nicky Rod are really probably the future of the sport. He's got dynamic movement, he has wrestling, he has incredible stamina for a man of that size. So again, I think real athletes like that, as more money comes into the sport, are gonna sort of take over the jiu-jitsu scene. Again, really hard for us regular folks to be able to compete against people like that. So again, some things Felipe did well. Felipe made a big adjustment from the match he had with Nicky Rod at ADCC. He used his knees better. He kept his knees a bit higher. He kept his knees together a bit more, much more aware of the body lock. He respected the body lock pass a whole lot more. Even when Nicky Rod was able to close his hands, he was able to have some later stage recovery, which again is something you didn't see at ADCC. But again, we know Gordon Ryan has a good body lock, so there's no doubt that he was working body lock, pass, defense, both for his original opponent, and that translated quite well against Nicky Rod. What other things did we see? Again, we saw a couple of back take attempts from Felipe. We saw a couple of arm and guillotine attempts. Felipe has a really good front headlock game, really good arm and guillotine. I know personally from training with him, I know from seeing back in the day at ACB, he was able to submit some good guys with that. One thing I will say though is having trained with Nicky Rod, basically impossible to guillotine. Both him and Nicky Ryan, just so hard to secure a guillotine on. They have this incredible ability, tripod up, shake you off. No matter how many times he gets out of my arm in guillotine, I will keep making bad decisions and trying it. So again, when I saw Felipe put him in the arm in guillotine, I didn't think it would be something he'd be able to catch. But again, it does look good to the judges because Nicky Rod has to make a strong defensive reaction. Some other things were obviously Nicky Rod leg lock attempts. I know he went for a couple of straight ankles. They definitely weren't as deep as his final outside heel hook attempt. I thought that was quite close. I think maybe you could argue it was the closest submission of the match. That would be something only Felipe and Nicky Rod are probably going to be able to confidently say. But again, competitive match. Felipe did try to wrestle up. Nicky Rod obviously has a massive wrestling advantage there. So you saw, although he did attempt it, it was very hard for him to do anything about it. And his back take attempts, Nicky Rod was able to use some really good defense to clear those and really not allow Felipe to either get 2 hooks or to get the top position out of it. Incredible match. Loved it. Obviously, it's a long, grueling match, especially for guys of that weight. I would definitely love to see him do it again. And obviously, we would all love to see both Felipe and Nicky Rod take on Gordon Ryan again. But again, I think shorter duration matches. What do we want? We want 2 guys that try to kill each other for 10 to 15 minutes. That is exciting. When the matches are too long, we start to pace ourselves. And you can see, again, as the match goes longer, sweat becomes a bigger factor in the match. And the slipperier it gets, the harder it is to get a submission. Early in the match, we're seeing technique versus technique. And obviously going to be have to use technique to submit your opponent. And again, it's going to be a little drier early in the match. As the match goes on, sweat plays a bigger factor, makes that technical aspect harder, makes cardio a more of a deciding factor, or your efficiency in technique more of a deciding factor in fatiguing the other guy. But again, later on in the match, you really only typically see submissions when one guy starts to mentally break, when they become too fatigued, too worn out from a tough match. Let's go to the co-main event. Giancarlo against Pedro Marinho. Something that was interesting going into this match, everyone counted Pedro out. It seemed to me even Flow Grappling were really putting a heavy attention on Giancarlo. I understand why. Probably a more marketable character, especially they've just created the documentary about him. He just won ADCC in, I will say, one of the most impressive performances I've really ever seen an ADCC competitor do, let alone it being his first ever ADCC and him being a trials winner again, being able to take out ADCC. So we saw this match and we saw Giancarlo struggle with some of the stuff like I really struggled with when I faced Pedro. Pedro is very good at strategies, very good at playing the mat space, distance. He's very good at looking busy while not really committing to too many attacks. I thought it was interesting, he was more aggressive against Giancarlo than I thought he was maybe against me in my match. And you saw that he was able to get a double leg, big foot swim. He did come close to passing a few times. He did pass my guy. Pedro has really, really good passing. And he's quite a special athlete, super strong, super quick. He almost has a Nicky Rod level of like athleticism. So again, he is exciting. He has his exciting moments. And I think not enough people respect his game out there. Again, you saw the betting lines and you saw a lot of people looking past him here. I was told Giancarlo was looking to call me out if he were to beat Pedro. Obviously that didn't happen. Again, interesting match, something I would consider taking. But again, obviously the money would have to be right for me to get involved in a match like that. But exciting co-main event. You would, a lot of people called it upset. I think probably Pedro, I thought it was probably a close match going in. I maybe gave the edge to Giancarlo before the match, but yeah, haven't watched it played out. Pedro is a tough guy to crack out there. It's a tough strategy to take him out. And now let's look at another match. JT Torres, Magid Hage. Magid Hage coming in with a lot of buzz from his Brazilian trials performance, where he's basically submitted everyone right up into the final against Mickey Galvao. Magid is a really cool character. I've known about Magid since back in the day when he baseball bat choked. Who was it? It was Clark Gracie and another guy. Like his gi game was crazy. He was a master of the baseball bat choke. Very intriguing character. He kind of disappeared for a bit and again came back for Brazilian trials. Got a lot of hype behind him. Very interesting guy. Looks like a fun guy to hang out with. JT Torres, obviously long-time legend of the sport, 2-time ADCC champion. I imagine he was coming back into this match, maybe frustrated after his ADCC performance, and he looked really good. And it was a good battle because Magid has a really sticky half guard. He has a really tricky half guard. It's like, it's very difficult to pass. You've seen him use that effectively against a lot of guys. JT ran straight out, took him down with a foot sweep, went straight into that half guard, and he was basically wearing Magid down. But again, he was struggling to pass for a little bit. But obviously, guys are fresh, guys are dry, half guard is sticky. He was able to wear him down and basically rinse and repeat the same half guard passing strategy. I think, having personally felt JT on top of me when we've trained together, crazy passing pressure. His ability of forward pressure on top to fatigue you is one of the most impressive things about his game and one of the best things he does compared to other athletes in the sport. Would have been great to see a submission. We did see him come close to a submission. I believe he took his back, went for an armbar at the end. Magid did something interesting where he threw a leg over, I believe, to prevent JT Torres bridging into the armbar, and time ran out. I'm not sure if he took any pops on that, but he definitely was not going to tap. Probably the most exciting moment of the match. Let's look at one more match. I'm not going to go through every match. Obviously, it was a long night. I did fall asleep a few times during the event. I think Flo lied to us about the start time. I was sitting there on the couch being like, wasn't this shit, man, to start fucking an hour ago. So let's talk about Amanda Bruse versus Jasmine Rocha. Jasmine, Wagner Rocha's daughter, if you recognize that last name. Super aggressive game. This was one of the more exciting matches on the card. A lot of back and forth action. Both of these women were really going after each other, really trying to get the finish. And I believe what we saw at the end was a smother finish. Jasmine was on the poor end of some of the exchanges, then ultimately at the end was able to pass the guard, get to mount, and hit a smother. So something pretty cool. I'm pretty sure she was like half Ezekiel choking her on the other side. It was hard to see with the camera angle. But again, a smother choke is something you definitely don't want to get hit with, but later on in the match, you breathe in heavy, someone covers your mouth, maybe as you've just exhaled, that hits hard. That's a painful thing. That's a panic-inducing thing. And when you panic, you want to take a big breath, makes it all the more difficult. So again, later in the match, Jasmine's able to hit really cool submission. Probably Wagner inspired. Wagner loves doing evil stuff like that to his opponents, but again, super impressive performance. Another match, another interesting match, a New Wave versus Atos match. I know typically, historically speaking, DDS and Atos were very competitive with each other. That's translated to New Wave, Atos being very competitive with each other. We see Jonnatas Gracie versus my former teammate Oliver Taza. Going into this match, I have to admit, I probably suspected Taza would be able to heel hook Jonnatas Gracie because he's historically a gi guy. He's really beginning his run in no gi. What we saw in that match was Taza was quite effective early. Taza was able to take him down. Taza came close to a heel hook. And then I believe Jonnatas Gracie had a significant strength advantage in this match and he was able to utilize that strength advantage technically to start fatiguing Taza. He did very good at controlling both legs and he was able to secure a few passes. He was even able to take, I believe, Oliver Taza's back 2 times in the match. But again, it was an exciting match. It was an interesting match. I know they had a couple of stoppages due to blood, which really slowed the pace of the match down. But again, impressive performance from Jonnatas Gracie. I expect probably big things coming from him ahead. Taza, tough loss at this point, but Taza always bounces back pretty strong. So again, it'd be interesting to see how that match goes down the line if they were able to do a rematch. WNO was a fun card to watch. It was a long card, but again, I expect big things from Flow Grappling as the year progresses.